Yep, we hear you loud and clear. That's great.
Great. All right, thanks, Jim. Okay, so so this session is on alien waves. I'm just start by introducing myself so many of you know me. I'm working in GÉANT in the Cambridge office, and my day job is transport network architect, so I do a few other things as well. But so a large part of my job is doing the network architecture, so the high level and future designs for the optical layers, which is largely the Infinera equipment. Okay, so moving on to the first slide. So what I'm going to talk about today is what we've been doing with alien waves over the past 6 to 12 months. So I'll do a quick overview on the economic case for alien waves. So why we're doing it, what it gives us. Some of the technical background on DWDM technology and how alien wave fits into DWDM. Then I'll be going through in some detail the field trial that we've successfully completed that goes from Amsterdam to Hamburg. So I'll describe that a bit and the results of that. And then I'll talk about how that's now moving onto a production service. So the production service is essentially up and running, and then the next steps for future. Right, so the economics of alien waves. So essentially what the economics of alien waves is about, as far as we're concerned in the GÉANT community, is about really sharing the underlying infrastructure across multiple NRENs. So when you build a transmission system, there's a lot of fixed costs involved. There's costs that you have to investments that you have to make before you actually can even turn up any services at all. So that's, you have to pay for your fiber IIU, you have to get the huts in place, the amplifiers, and then there's power and so on. So there's a lot of fixed costs, and if you've only got a few services, then those fixed costs will be distributed over a few services, and you've got a very high cost. If you can increase the number of services on that infrastructure, you're certainly going to reduce the cost per service. So on my next slide, you'll see an economic analysis that we did, and this is actual real numbers for the Amsterdam to Hamburg system that's now up and running. So what we found there with the analysis is that the best price we could find for 100 gigabit per second waves was 65,000 euros, and the cost per wave, you can see in the blue line is where we were using our own infrastructure. So if you have one wave, you've got a high cost, 200,000 euros. That just drops away nicely as you increase the number of waves, services on the system. But it drops much faster. It starts from a lower point and drops faster with alien waves, because we're sharing the infrastructure with SurfNet as well as other users. So the break-even point is 300 gigabits per second, or 300 gigabits per second. So that's broadly the motivation to share the infrastructure in the community. But there's also a broader picture for alien waves. So if you look what's going on out in the commercial world, you can see that particularly if you focus on the Trans-Pacific capacity, you'll see that in 2009 to 2014, there has been a big jump in the total capacity, but the alien wave share of that has jumped tremendously and is now 50% of transatlantic capacity. So there's very strong requirements out there. People are using this, and these are I've described these as others, non-internet background providers. These are largely the Googles of this world. They're very keen, and they keep this very quiet, but so there's a lot going on out there. So there's something to keep an eye on. So DWDM. What is DWDM? I guess most of you will be familiar with it. It's essentially makes use of the spectrum so that you modulate light at different colors so that you can put multiple wavelengths on a single fiber. It also makes use of amplifiers, so operates in C-band, which is 1525 to 1565 nanometer band. And it makes use of the EDFA technology, which came in the 90s, which is the erbium doped fiber amplifier. So you can get a reach of 1,000, maybe 2,000 kilometers on those systems. So they're the standard way of getting capacity around, and you can fit up to 80 waves there. So that's DWDM. So looking at the next slide, what you can see here is sort of a high-level picture of the components that make up a DWDM system. So essentially what you've got is a series of, so this is only showing one direction, so transmitter on the left, receiver on the right. In practice it's bidirectional, so you have these same going in the reverse direction. But you have a set of transponders. The transmitters are also known as transponders. These modulate at up to a few years ago they were typically at 10 gigabits. We're now rapidly moving to 100 gigabit coherent systems. So they modulate the light. They're then multiplexed onto a single fiber, go through a series of amplifiers, and then they're demultiplexed and terminated at the receiver. So the important thing is how this is sliced up in the alien wave world. In the alien wave world, so the central line there is managed by the operator. So in this case, SurfNet, for our trial, owns both the end multiplexers, which also have wavelength selective switching and the ROADMs, and the fiber and amplifiers. Whereas the transmitter, the transponders are owned by the client, the alien wave client. In this case, it's GÉANT. So that's how the infrastructure is split up. So the field trial. So the field trial has just been concluded and was very successful. As I've said in the last slide, it's an alien wave field trial. The light comes from third-party equipment, in this case GÉANT, and goes into DWD equipment. So the field trial was operating from Amsterdam to Hamburg on the SurfNet equipment, and on the slide here you can see what motivated the choice of this particular route. So previously we had the green fiber, which goes from Amsterdam to Copenhagen and Frankfurt to Copenhagen. Those fibers were on IRUs from Telia Sonera, so at least actually from Telia Sonera. And that the terms of that contract had come to an end, and the cost of reprocuring that fiber was too high. So we decided that we would look for alternative ways of connecting. So what we've done is we've closed down the Copenhagen POP, and we've moved the connection point for Nordinet for the region to Hamburg. So DFN connects in Hamburg as well as PSNC. So the new solution looks like this. So the yellow line shows the existing SurfNet fiber, and the green line shows the GÉANT cable. So currently we still have both systems up and running. So the SurfNet system runs Sienna, and we have we have multiple 100 gigabits operating on that system, and the GÉANT fiber is coming out. The services haven't, I'm not sure whether the service has been migrated over yet, but if not yet, they will be shortly. So I'm just going to give a quick rundown of the results of our field trial. So the field trial was a two-phase approach. In the first phase, what we did is we tested the optical performance and looked at the operational procedures to understand how we can use it. Would it work? Would it be stable? And so on. So in the first phase, what we did, because we didn't want to invest the money, we used equipment that was available. In that case, SurfNet used their fixed filters, so fixed filters in their optical multiplexing to multiplex the alien waves on. In the second phase, in the production phase, said we will, but in fact we have now moved over to the ROADM solution. So ROADMs are used at each end of the, so in the Amsterdam and Hamburg end, and the waves, our GÉANT waves are connected in via the ROADM. So it gives much more flexibility to turn up new waves as we need. So looking at the next slide, this shows the details of how the field trial is connected. So the grey area, so the boxes at each end, is the DTNX, so that's the Infinera transmission equipment, and the card of interest in that is the AOLM, which is the photonic PIC. So this is the card that contains integrated photonic circuit with 10 wavelengths of 50 gigabits per second each. So we took the light out of that, we amplified it, we split it out into separate fibers. So for the field trial, we had 3 fibers, each carrying 100 gigabit. They went into a fixed filter, and then they passed through so that's the 6500 Sienna equipment. So that's the setup for the field trial. So in this slide here, you can see the results of some of our measurements. So what we were looking at here is the receive sensitivity. So these two curves are a plot of receive power at our the input into our equipment. So that's the input into the AOLX card coming through the alien, as we passed through the alien wave. And what we did is we attenuated the signal. So the operating position is the bottom right end of the curve. So right at the bottom of the curve, you see that the receive power, depending on which direction you're going, is either about -12 or about -16, 17. It's about 5 dB difference between the two directions. So there's so the forward error correction is working not too hard there. It's about 10 to the -6 is the background errors, which are very easy to remove with forward error correction. And what we did is in the two ends, we increased the attenuation, in one case by 10 dB, the other case by 12 dB, and the system continued to work without any transmission errors. So even though the background error rate was of the order of 10 to the -4, 3 or 4, around 10 to the -4, the forward error correction will continue to work correctly, and so there was no transmission error. So what we see there is a very robust system. It can cope with considerable reduction in power. What I haven't shown here is we've also tried attenuating the power at other parts of the system, and it was also very stable when we reduced the power on wavelengths provided by Sienna, the Sienna wavelengths, so SurfNet wavelengths, and so on. So a very robust solution. So we were very happy with those results. The other results was around the operational issue to really understand how in an alien wave, how to interpret the alarms. So what we found was with the system as we tested, there were kind of 4 stages of different types of alarms that we could detect. So in the first stage, if there is some reduction in power, some loss of fidelity in the system, there is we can detect the prefect error starting to get a bit worse. In that case, what happens is we can set a threshold crossing, and if the error rate crosses that threshold, a warning will be raised. So that was the first level of detection of problems. The second level is if the alien wave becomes so degraded that the Q factor drops, so the noise perhaps gets too bad, Q factor drops below 10, Infinera will automatically raise an alarm there, so you can detect that the system is on the edge and may soon fall over. And then thirdly, cutting the fibre on the SurfNet system results in the loss of frame, which pass through, and you see a loss of frame at the end because there's still optical noise on the system. And then finally, if there's a fibre cut between GÉANT and SurfNet, you get a loss of signal. So there's 4 different levels of alarms, and it produces a pretty good operational model to be able to detect and understand faults in the system. So that was good. So what's the next steps? So the next steps is, so we've just got some news here that it's looking very much more likely that the Hamburg to Poznan solution is likely to go ahead. So Hamburg to Poznan will be a hybrid solution. So we're going to use alien waves from Hamburg to the German border over DFN, and then from the German border to Poznan, we're going to use Infinera equipment, and that'll be shown in the next slide here. So the alien wave section of the Hamburg to Poznan connectivity it essentially uses the DFN's ECI equipment, and the solution is very similar to the solution that we've built from Amsterdam to Hamburg. So the light is injected into a ROADM, so WSSs to control each wavelength independently. DFN passes the light on to the egress point and it passes between AOLX. So in this case, all 10 waves will be injected onto the system, DFN system. One thing to note here, there is a certain amount of spectrum management that's required. The AOLX cards, so the 10 waves of 50 gigabits per second each have fixed positions in the spectrum. So coordination is required with DFN to make sure that spectrum is available. But if for some reason a particular ITU grid slot isn't available because it's being used, it can be turned off at the ingress and egress using the WSS or the ROADM. Okay, so in summary, alien waves are here, they're used, we're happy with them so far, they seem to be robust, they're saving money, and importantly, not only do they save money, they allow us to keep the Infinera. So for us, one of the benefits of the Infinera equipment is that it has very rapid turn up, so it's based on an OTN switch core, which allows service to be turned up very, very rapidly. So we see that as a very strong point for service delivery. And we also have restoration in there. So ability to deliver services rapidly with restoration is a very important factor for us and makes it a much stronger product than just buying waves commercially. So not only are we saving money here compared to buying waves commercially, but we're also retaining those important fast turn-up and restoration features. So I think I'll stop there and give people an opportunity to ask questions.
Thanks very much, Guy. It's very interesting. There is already a question from Anna. She's asking, have you considered any options for failure detection and in general OAM from the SurfNet side, i.e. the network hosting the alien wave? How can they perform OAM, if any?
So in terms of operations and maintenance, so it's a good question. From their point of view, their system kind of just, from the WSS, between the two WSS, they can't really tell the difference. Whether it's a Sienna transponder or a GÉANT transponder, it's light. They've got all the same levels of alarms and maintenance, power level monitoring. I guess the trick is for us that we don't have visibility to that. So we have to rely on a close cooperation with SurfNet's network operations team. So if we start to see some problems, we have to speak to them, or if they see problems, they have to speak to us. So it's largely about coordinating communications. I'm not quite sure whether that answers your question.
So Anna follows up with, can you see an automated system for this coming anytime soon?
Right. So there is some potential. I think, for example, to automate OAM, for example. So we in GÉANT, we have a dashboard where when there's alarms, there is traps. So SNMP traps are sent to our dashboard from the Infinera equipment. So there would be a way to make a kind of specialized dashboard where if we were selling alien waves, we could probably localize particular alarms associated with the alien wave and send them to a dashboard. And I'm sure that SurfNet would have the ability to do that if that was a service that we were looking for. So in terms of OAM, there is some, I think there is potential to have more visibility into each other's networks and operations.
Thanks. Anna says thank you for that answer. And Radek is asking, as alien wave issue seems very up to date, is GÉANT backbone structure going to be available for transport of NREN's alien waves? Thank you.
Great question. The answer is yes. I'd love to see it. At the moment, it's because so one thing that we found is that having a ROADM in your system makes alien waves a lot easier, because it means that you've got this ability to turn on and off waves at the boundary, and we don't have that in our network. So we would love to support to carry alien waves from the NRENs, but it's a little bit cumbersome at the moment in the way Infinera does this. So one possibility would be to start. So Infinera has a roadmap to add ROADMs to their portfolio, and we could add ROADMs to support alien waves. It's a possibility, or we could look at possibly other ways to do alien waves, which might not be quite as convenient. But certainly, if there is anybody who would like GÉANT to carry an alien wave, do come and speak to us, and we'll have a discussion and see whether it's possible, because I think it's something that would be very good to do.
Thanks, Guy. There's another question from Richard in GÉANT. I see the Amsterdam example was positive. What are the main economic factors when deciding to invest in alien waves versus commercial alternatives?
Right. So I guess there's a slight controversy in this, because one of the reasons why GÉANT was set up, or back in the day Dante was set up, was so that we could be a kind of common backbone for the whole community. But since then, there's been a kind of I would say a fracturing of that vision, so that some NRENs have built their own competing fibre infrastructure, particularly in the northern regions. So I'm thinking Poland, SurfNet, Dwdm, so on, have built their own cross-border fibre, or their fibre that crosses borders. So that's diluted to some extent our business model in GÉANT. So what we need to do is we need to get back and cooperate much more closely again with the NRENs to undo that dilution. And so as I said at the beginning, it's about removing the dilution of the number of services of the infrastructure. I think that's what this successfully does in Amsterdam to Hamburg. It goes from two systems down to one system, and then we've got much less shared fixed costs that we can then share among the inmates. So it goes back to those values of shared common infrastructure between the inmates and GÉANT.
Thanks again, Guy. And there's one last question from Pavel, and this might be something we have to take offline because it's to do with warranty issues, etc. Were there any warranty issues with Sienna during the Alien Waves trial with Infineria Alien Waves? Official confirmation.
Good question. As one thing I forgot to mention is that there is a kind of a related issue, which is a licensing, which is not kind of related to warranty. So Sienna really doesn't like none of the equipment vendors like doing alien waves. The reason they don't like it is because all the profits tend to be in the transponders, and they don't make many profits in the amplifiers. So it kind of breaks their business model to sell alien waves. So Sienna has a licensing in place. So that is the community. So SurfNet has to pay and charge us for a license fee to carry alien waves, and that's kind of part of the whole warranty model, because obviously we're adding light into their system, and they don't know. We could do something like increase the power tremendously, which would then affect the other waves. So yes, it's a very good question. Does it kind of take away the kind of guarantees of performance of the Sienna system if we do something strange on that alien wave? I think that's kind of a grey area. But given that they are licensing it, they do understand, and given how huge, as I showed you, that 50% of the transatlantic market now is alien waves with the likes of Google. So they've got no choice. They have to be in it. So there is a grey area there, but Sienna are really doing their best to work with us on this.
Thanks, and Pavel's acknowledging he understands. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Guy for taking the time out preparing this really interesting overview, and thank you all for attending the showcase. And as I say, this will be available on the GÉANT TV YouTube channel if you want to review or use that as a link to send out to people who are interested in an overview of alien waves, what they are and what they do. So thanks again, Guy. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming.